Jessica Crow. I am the founder of Apogee and the host of Change Leader Insights, which is a podcast where we talk about all things change, leadership, growth, innovation. And I'm so excited to have here with me Brynn Shader. She is an organizational change management speaker and advisor. Her background is in strategic HR, technology, and leadership. She's a world traveler, a long distance swimmer. She's a discomfort advocate where she leverages the pain of sport to stay connected to the rough edges of change. I love that so much. And she's here to talk about change HR. But first, before we get into that, Brynn, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your origin story, how you got to where you are today? And then I'll pepper you with some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for having me here, Jessica. I love your podcast. The people you have on this podcast are people I look up to. So I feel
Me
very
too. Thank
honored.
you.
My origin story, I would say, is I found change management through happenstance. I think a lot of us maybe feel that
Yep.
way. And I was doing change management before it was even called change management. And so I started off in HR on purpose. I'm one of those people. I think I'm in a minority out of the HR community, my HR friends, where I raised my hand and said, I want to be in human resources. So I had been in sales at the time, and I had gotten a taste for HR when I was at Bloomberg. It was a startup division of Bloomberg, and there was no HR, there was no
Right.
onboarding. And
Right.
so I started creating these onboarding programs for my fellow peers who were starting. And I was like, that's what I want to do.
That's cool.
So I moved cross country to Denver and started recruiting, and found that when I placed someone in a job, I wanted to see where they ended up. And so I said, oh, so I need to go and be in talent management.
Yeah.
So I spent some time in talent management doing leadership development courses, facilitation. I was really blessed with some really cool opportunities. One of them was with a ski company.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was so awesome. And I worked for the University of Colorado, and that was they were like, we need to hire you for two roles. We need you to wear a leadership development hat, but then we're also implementing a new technology. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds great. And so I ended up, that was my first digital transformation before it was not even called that.
Right.
So I got hooked from there, and I've been doing it ever since. And now that is my niche. Is really digital transformations. And I love working with HR.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, so based on your background, what do you see as like the biggest opportunity in change management, agile change management? What really excites you about where you're at today? And where do you think, I guess, the industry is headed, or where do you want to see it head?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so excited that it's really a discipline, and that there are some like your certification that's really out there and saying, hey, hey kids right out of school, this is a career, because it's such meaningful work, and it's really, really impactful, and it can just make the difference. And so I'm
Huge
so
difference.
excited
Yeah.
for where we are. I think what I get the most excited about, with my background in HR and my background leading change initiatives in other functions, in IT, in finance. Right now, my client is in supply chain. And what I think about the future, I think about what I call change HR, which is the new era of HR, where and I'm always going to consider myself as part of the HR community forever, but we are being called to leverage and really maximize our human insights, our understanding of human behavior and people, and really progress organizations forward, helping them to become more resilient and more innovative by putting people at the center of change.
Right.
And who is better equipped to do that than human resources or people services or whatever we call it?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think I've seen that in organizations, and a client that I have right now, they are within the HR team, and they're being tasked with implementing change. And I think, whether it's fair or not, HR does get tasked with implementing change because of their focus on people. But do you, I do see an opportunity, maybe this is the way to frame it, in terms of developing and cultivating change management skills within the HR team, because so much of what they have focused on, or what maybe like where their bread and butter is talent management and leadership development and recruiting and those functions that I think we traditionally think of. But what your invitation is, let's think about this differently, and how do we change HR, so to speak? So what are some of the, I guess, what's your take on that? Do you believe most HR organizations are prepared for this new way of thinking, or is there some upskilling or mindset shifts that need to happen in order to really reach that next era?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Jessica. I don't think that they're ready. I think they want it. I think they're hungry to bring their value and their impact across the business in ways that are really, really impactful. And I think, like, I just gave a talk at the Austin SHRM conference, and I had a picture on my slide that showed, the cobbler's son has no shoes, right?
Right.
And I remember when I was on a talent management team and we're driving independent individual development plans, IDPs, everyone needs an IDP,
right,
so that you can develop your career. And we didn't have them ourselves. And we used to laugh about it, but it's such a common tale.
Yeah.
And so one of my invitations, I think one of the most exciting parts of this new era, is really having HR come to the table and really cut their teeth on what is change management. I think we've been seeing from a lot of these HR thought leaders and HR futurists that, we are now more strategic than we've ever been. We have a seat at the table now. We didn't used to, but we have the seat. And so now it's, how do we elevate that seat? And how do we help the rest of the function, the rest of the organization, really leverage change as opportunity for growth, no matter what the change is? And that has to start with developing those competencies within HR themselves.
Got it.
I've also seen, like, Gartner say that, one of the top priorities for CHROs, at least in 2024, was change management competency or something like that. And so I think that that's a skill set, being change agility, leadership agility. These are all skill sets that we need to build across the organization and build it into the way that we are developing our leaders and our employees. Like, change agility should be one of the, behavioral anchors, a way that we are helping employees grow, metrics that we use to show how agile could they be, or are they being, and what, where do we want to get them? Because the future is change. It's never, it's only going to get faster. And so, my call to HR and the first invitation, and I'm actually working on some certifications for HR, for change management, specifically for HR, is to get them sort of ahead of the curve, so that they feel confident they can start showcasing and telling stories about their impact through data and visual storytelling across the business. And then they will build their credibility, and naturally the rest of the business is going to want some of what they have.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's like almost having an HR person on every initiative or project, not just doing the talent management component or recruiting.
Totally.
Really a strategic partner.
We have project managers, but we don't have, we don't have CMs. We have PMs who think about scope, budget, timeline.
But
who's thinking about the people impact? And I think some organizations, they're realizing this gap. Some maybe they're not there yet, and some are already addressing it, and that's all good. Wherever an organization is I think there's nothing wrong. It's just opportunity to wear the lens of people. Anything that is going to impact how employees do their jobs, or how, the ways of working, as we call it.
I like what you're saying. I would agree. Not every organization has a change manager and a project manager, but most every organization has a human resources manager or individual who is in that capacity. So if, the organization isn't willing to invest in dedicated staff members who are focused on change management, which there's a lot of pros and cons. It depends on the innovation kind of capability within the organization. And then there's ebbs and flows. An HR leader is a great place to embed that competency because they're there, they're a necessary critical role, and they're already thinking about people, right? As part of what they do day to day. I like that. That's a good way of kind of framing that. So I guess in terms of this whole, like, we need to upskill, we need to develop our HR leaders to think differently about their role, their responsibilities, the skill and value that they can bring to the organization. What are some, if you're an HR person in an organization today and you don't have, what you're describing isn't present, how do, like, what's a step or two that they can take to start to advocate for this new approach to change HR, this new way of thinking?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think, first, I think we have to address the fact that since COVID, and I talk about this a lot on stages, that, we had pre-COVID and then we had after COVID. Pre-COVID, HR, let's say HR had like 6 roles that they play. Like one HR person maybe wears 6 different hats.
Yeah.
After COVID, they're therapists, they're health and safety, they're technologists, they're remote workforce architects. Like, it's like the roles quadrupled that they're supposed to be playing. Yet, did the budgets increase? I think a lot of HR folks would say probably not, and they might say it, with some frustration. And so I think the first thing that we need to address is at the very top. I think, the CHROs baking in this initiative, or this, I don't know what to call it, this strategic priority into what they already have, and then telling the story at, in their executive committee meetings and getting buy-in from the rest of the organization, I think is critical. It has to start at the top. And we have to have our leaders believing that this is a priority, so that then their team and then those leaders are creating space for all members of the HR function, space to really focus on this. So I would say that has to come first, because the other way around, it's really hard. It's easy to get frustrated and give up. And I would too, if I have all these, priorities on my plate, and then I'm trying to skill build that's not even being like acknowledged by the higher ups as priority, I'm probably not going to keep it up. And so I think once it's kind of baked in as a strategic priority, and it's cascaded down, and it's, included in IDPs, and it's included in goal setting, I think there's so many great trainings out there. Your training, for example,
Thank you.
There's some stuff that you can do, virtual training. There's lots of primers on LinkedIn. Josh Burson has like Change Agility. My good friends in Australia that Dr. Jen Fram and Lena Ross with the ACLI, the Agile Leadership Training Institute, have some really great stuff. So I would say like that's really a good place to start. There's amazing books out there. I mean, there's all kinds of. Switch is one of my favorite.
I love Switch. I'm teaching on that in my one of my courses. Yeah.
It's good for leaders and individual contributors. I think this explains change.
Absolutely.
In such great ways. And so I think, but then really what I want to emphasize here in response to your question is communities of learning.
Yeah.
I think it's having, an HR person pair with an HR person and putting it into practical use. There is always something changing. So can we take something little, maybe it's a new process that we have to adopt. Can we do little micro experiments with, change management foundations, identify what the impacts are with the stakeholders, what do we need to communicate, all those things, and just start to use it as a way to test and see the value. right? Because if we start to see the value ourselves as we're learning, I think it motivates us to want to learn more.
Yeah. And then you can also leverage those data points to surface that with your leadership.
Yes.
So as you were explaining that, I agree that there has to be support at the top. But if you're an individual contributor, how do you convince your leadership that this is something that they should sponsor and buy into? And I like what you're saying, because you can do those things, that agile change management, lean change management approach within your own work, and
Yep.
then to capture those data points, right? How did what you do differently based on leveraging change management versus not, start to tell the story yourself, and that community piece, share that with your peers. There's power in kind of groups of people sharing and surfacing, hey, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're seeing this be something that we should focus on, develop an internal capability. So maybe it's, kind of, if you don't have that leader who understands it, how can you elevate the
I
message
love that.
through the work? Yeah.
I love what you're saying, because it's not a chicken or the egg. Sometimes
right.
it's just like happening at the same time. And there's always opportunities to try this out and see what the impacts. Maybe there's, I've got some friends over in IT and they're doing something that's going to disrupt the way, service agents answer the phones. I don't know, make this up. And maybe I say, hey, I'm learning about change management. Can I like work with you a little bit on this? And can I see what this might, how this might be different. I think and you probably know this better than anybody, one of the greatest challenges with the practice of change management is sometimes a real lack of measurable data.
Yeah.
We have to create it, we have to find it, and that's okay. We can use pulse surveys, we can use anecdotal, we can use there is data available. But I think, like having these like individuals knowing that data doesn't have to be numbers. It can be stories, it can be case studies, it can be I think one of the ways that that HR will really, they hear the value of change management is because it is risk mitigating. When you practice good change management, you are mitigating risk, which they care so much about. And so using that to say, hey, look, we mitigated this risk by approaching this change this way. These were the results. Like, this has value.
Yeah, I like that. So you're really getting into the language of the space that you're playing in, and leveraging that as an advantage, leveraging that to communicate what the needs are. That's cool. Well, what else? So, for HR leaders, HR people who are new in their career, they want to develop their change management skills. They're willing to create their own use cases. What are some other things, as you've gone through your HR journey and you've adapted and skill build, over the years, what are some adjacent skills to even change management or HR that have really helped you think and shape kind of your approach with your clients that you have today?
Oh, these are such good questions, Jessica. No wonder you have a podcast. So I think I'm closing my eyes and breathing, because one of the biggest skills is mindfulness.
Yes, I love that. That was what you said.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know you were going to say that. I'm like, whoa. And I love it. I teach on that too. I love that.
Because when we talk about being agile, like, I mean, that takes emotional intelligence. That takes like spiritual awareness and acknowledging where your energetic charge is, so that you can be where you are in the moment and then adjust when you're ready. Like and so to be able to develop the ability to be agile, we have to know where we're at. And that to me takes practicing mindfulness.
Yes.
And so I think whenever somebody asks me, like, what are some of the key skills, I don't say actually communications, and I don't say like training. I say mindfulness. That's one of them.
Yeah.
The other one is really like a consultative approach. Sometimes I talk to HR professionals and they don't, for whatever reason, see themselves as consultants. But I think that they are. And I think that the business needs them to, and I'm not necessarily talking about payroll. Like I
Right.
consider payroll to be a little bit like, that's more of a finance focused function, in the skill set, and that it's the career aspirations of someone in payroll tend to be quite different from the rest of HR.
Right.
So I just like
Right.
to kind of separate those just a bit.
Yeah.
But I think developing a consultative approach to working with whoever the stakeholder is, I think is really important. And within that consultative approach, I would say like facilitation and coaching comes in. And the whole purpose of what I'm drawing out right now is developing the skills to ask the right questions that the person you're talking to may not even be aware of, to unearth some of the, that stuff that's under the surface about what are they most scared of with, we're implementing, let's say, like a new applicant tracking system, or maybe, let's say they're partnering with finance and they're implementing, finance is changing the expense process for everybody. They might not know right away, anything except for what's right in their mind. And so I think being able to draw out the information that we need to be effective as change managers is the second skill set. And that's, it's these are both, I totally acknowledge, these are nuanced skills. They're not like, I can go take a communications 101 class, but I think that they are monumental, and not only will help like, let's say there are people new to change management, it will not only help them for the rest of their career, but it's going to also add value to their personal lives.
I fully agree with that. And I love those are all great recommendations. I think it's a really smart way of framing what skills people should be thinking about too. And those are very accessible as well. Mindfulness, facilitation, coaching skills. Even if you don't go through a coaching program, you mentioned, asking powerful questions. Those are things that you can learn and develop and practice doing. And really what you're getting to is something, as a change management leader, the number one thing that kind of holds people back is self-concern, right? There's a change, they may know nothing about it, but their immediate thought is, what does it mean to me? Like, how does it impact my day-to-day, my career opportunities? All of those things come up. So yes, it can absolutely help in the workplace and beyond. Brynn, this has been such a fun conversation. You're an expert in so many areas, and I love that you're bringing it together in a cohesive platform. And I would imagine people who are in the HR space are inspired by what you have to say, because it gives them an opportunity to think differently and bigger and more expansively about their roles and responsibilities and opportunities to really impact people positively in the workplace. So I wish you so much success as you're getting your message out there and with the clients that you're working with. Where can people find you if they want to just connect, hire you, have you as a speaker? Like, what's the best place to go?
BrynnShader.com is an easy place to go. I'm always available on LinkedIn. Send me a connect. I would love to, I live on LinkedIn. It's kind of, there's such good information and good stuff on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your light and your wisdom with the Apogee and Change Leader Insights community today.
Thank you for having me. This is
so fun. Welcome. I'm so glad that we got this chance to do this. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.